And welcome, as always, to the My Tennis Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Whelan, and I'm joined today by the living legend himself, Sam Tyler. Sam, how's it going?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm pretty hot. I've closed the windows to record. I now instantly regret it. I noticed you got the back door open now, which is very...
Yeah, back
Um,
doors were open. Unfortunately, no air conditioning units, but yeah, the back doors were open. So
but my house is full of babies and kids and dogs and cats. So I've literally
yeah,
just locked myself in the living room to record this. But listen, Sam, thanks as always for joining us. We're both missing the England game, which could be a blessing in disguise, the way we're playing over the past couple of games.
stuff
So
was great.
don't think we're missing too much.
No.
As it stands, we won't give any spoilers away. But Sam's here today to discuss schools coaches. So some people may be familiar from you from Tots Tennis, because obviously we've done a Tots Tennis podcast. We've done Tiny Tennis Titans together. We've done a workshop together. We wrote a book together. You're virtually my tennis wife at this stage, mate. We do so much together. I think my wife's
No,
going to be worried.
no.
But people don't understand what an amazing schools coach you are and what an amazing sort of tennis career and journey you've had through schools coaching. So maybe just kick us off with what you've done in schools and why you're also a schools legend as well as a mini tennis legend.
I wouldn't say I'm a legend, but thank you for that, Steve. Um, my school stuff started years ago. The first club I kind of worked at when I moved to London, we did a massive outreach on schools, and like normal with schools coaching, there was only one person who wanted to do it, and that was me. And I always loved it from my time in Cornwall. The coach that I worked with down in Cornwall was really passionate about going into schools. We're talking many years ago now. Simple format, kind of went in, did few bits, sales pitch, and tried to get the children on board. And when I moved to London, I kind of took that on, but I was the only one who wanted to do it. So for years, like the local schools in the area that I worked in Bromley, I'd go around to a sales pitch for the coaching program, try and get children on board. And then it kind of grew from there, where schools started to get funding. We that PPA cover, CPD training for teachers. And when that funding cuts kind of started to happen, schools didn't want you just to go in and do one session to advertise. Schools were asking you to go in for 5 or 6 weeks in the summer term and teach tennis, because teachers found it, let's be honest, tennis isn't an easy sport. You know, we all know it's one of the harder sports. Teachers trying to teach it, it just didn't work. And what I was doing was going in and actually getting 30 kids, 30 to 35 children having a go at tennis. And it kind of went from there. And then I'll never ever forget it. I was working in a school, and there was 2 teachers watching from the top window. One of them was the head teacher of the school, very, very scary lady. We're talking about, it must have been about 15 years ago now. The finance bursar and the PE coordinator were all watching me. And I thought, what have I done? Immediate reaction was they weren't smiling or laughing. They were like quite seriously looking down. Anyway, following week, I went back into the school. The PE teacher came in and spoke to me, and one of the other ladies, kind of like the senior members of staff, came to speak to me and said, look, we don't want to lose you. We'd actually like you to be part of the school PE program, which for me at the time, just got married as well. So to have a steady income, an employed income as well as my coaching I was doing as well. And I became a PE coordinator at the local primary school. This wasn't a private school, just a state school. And it was fantastic. It was kind of 3 of the best years I've had as a coach, working in school. I wasn't just teaching tennis. I learned so many other things. I became a qualified gymnastics teacher. I was already a football coach at the time. I was doing outdoor pursuit stuff with children. I was taking children to fixtures, football matches, netball matches. It was phenomenal. And I was doing that alongside what I was doing as a tennis coach at the local club as well. I was actually head of development at that club. And it was probably hard at times. My boss at the time, I'm sure he kind of was a bit concerned that I was probably doing too much at the school, and he probably wanted me to be more the tennis club. But I know he also appreciated the link, because when it came to holiday camps, or certainly where classes may have been a bit low, I had that link in the school where I could turn around and go, right, guys, this is what we're doing over the summer. This is what we're doing over half term. And I became a face for that. And it was phenomenal. And it's kind of progressed from there. So I then stopped at that school. The kind of the staffing changed at the school. They got in a different team to kind of come in and work and do the PE, which is what a lot of primary state schools are doing now. But a lot of these companies that come in and run sports don't do tennis. It's harder to do. The equipment's more expensive. They do look at local tennis clubs. So when I moved to my club, Park Langley, one of the parts of my role was definitely to be more involved in the schools. And when we literally came out of COVID, we hit loads of the schools. And it wasn't just a case of advertising, but it's being a face of the school.
Yeah.
And knowing, I mean, I'm very, very lucky in the area that I'm in. We've got lots of schools, and even though there's a fight, not a fight, sorry, there's a rivalry between the local clubs, it's also massive which schools you get.
Yeah.
You know, like if a tennis club in our area goes, well, we got the link to that school, but we're not bothered about using it, it's a huge loss. And I think some of the smaller clubs don't think about that.
Yeah.
We were very, very lucky. Park Langley, my managers and the team behind me, that they get into so many of the local schools. We've been in, I'm sure it's almost around the 15, 20 mark schools in our area alone. And you think about that, if you've got a coach in all of those schools. I mean, I got told on many of occasions that, Sam, you can't do them all. I wanted to, but you can't do them all. And the rest of the team got more and more involved at doing the schools and stuff as well, which is great. And that again, coming back to it being the face of a school, that's the coach that comes to our school. And it then comes back to the 10, we want to book him for lessons. But my son really, or my daughter really liked Sam, or really liked this coach, really liked this. And I reckon so many players, certainly in the summer term, come into the holiday programs. We have children come into the holiday programs, might necessarily aren't in the coaching program, but we've seen them at local schools.
Yeah.
And it's huge. And letting go of the schools and not having any of those schools on board in your program is such a loss. So actually now to my kind of current position, I've been working now for the last 2 years full-time in a private school as a PE kind of assistant PE coordinator, and helper with their staffing. I've been doing tennis, but not only tennis, athletic. I've been running after school clubs and breakfast clubs at the school. I'm still there at the moment, with possibly something big happening in the future. So I think that the whole thing of thinking schools is hard work, and not taking advantage of your school links, in this area, there's so many clubs. You can throw a stone in the area I live in and hit a tennis club.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so important that you make use of those links that you have.
Man, it's really good. And I've got a couple of questions as you were talking now that I want to sort of pick up on. And I think one of the first ones was, you mentioned you were the only coach who was willing to do it. And I think it's a barrier that I've noticed a lot, whether I've managed the program, whether I've run a business, whether or not I've gone into schools. Like when you sort of say to coaches, okay, who fancies doing the school? It's normally a case of everyone puts their head down and pretends they're busy. So maybe just think about, and maybe we can discuss what the barriers are in your opinion. The second question is, can you do a backflip being a qualified gymnast instructor or coach? I think that's really important for me to know next time we get on the workshop. And I think also, and we'll probably get onto this a little bit later on after we look at the barriers, but like from what I gather from what you say, like you've almost become a much more rounded coach because of the exposure with the after school clubs, before school, doing different disciplines, different sports as well. And I think we'll touch upon barriers, but one of the biggest barriers I see with coaches, because I still work at a school a week, because I quite enjoy schools coaching, but I've worked in hundreds of hours of schools coaching. And the biggest mistake I think I made when I first started doing schools coaching, and most coaches that I see, is they go in and they almost try and deliver it like a tennis lesson, like they
Yeah.
would at the club. And it's a completely different environment, completely different players, or kids in this case. And I think because they don't get the same reaction in a school, for me, that's what scares the life out of a coach. Because you may be at your club in a mini red session, you got 8 kids on this big, massive tennis court. Whatever you say, they listen to.
Yeah.
And they've almost chosen to be at tennis after school club. I know the one I do, 90% of the kids don't choose to be at after school club. It's just convenient for the parents. And what type of barriers, or what do you see within tennis coaches when they go into a school? Of why is it so different? Because for me, it's not tennis coaching as we know it, but what's different?
So I think the big one thing I'd like to point out now, certainly at my club, is that there are more coaches want to do it.
That's good.
So that's one thing that it has changed for me. When I first started, no one, a couple of us maybe, but there seems to be more coaches that are willing to try and do it. And we've done coaches stuff in meetings on how to. I did one on how to work in schools, and one of our other coaches did one recently. Great stuff and great ideas that he used and things that he did on court. Actually, Dale, it was a fantastic meeting. And he did loads of different bits, and we all share ideas on how to work as well. And I think that does develop confidence.
Great.
But I think initially before that, coaches don't like the fact that they've got 30 kids, and generally the teacher will go, "See you later, I'm off the mark." I think that's what it comes down to. The teacher will go, "Leaving it to you. You're the professional. I haven't got a clue. I'm sitting over there in the corner."
Yeah.
I'm
doing some marketing. It was a classic one.
Yeah, probably not a clue. That's probably a wrong way of putting it. But you're the professional. They have to deal with 30 kids. They're a professional.
Yeah.
Expecting you to do the same.
Yeah.
And obviously, as a tennis coach, you're not as exposed to that. Not it's and I think the second biggest barrier is if I'm running a group at the tennis club, and I might have 30 kids there for a holiday camp. Kid wants to be there. It's a holiday camp. Every kid wants to be there.
Yeah.
But you're in a school, there'll be a good 20 to 30% of those children that aren't interested in it.
80, 90 in my experience generally, but you must have a good school, mate.
They don't want to play sports. Some of them don't like sports.
Yeah.
Some of them are into their computers. Some of them are dancers. Some of them do. Yeah, some of them do horse. Everything's they're so. And I think when you go into it delivering a lesson, and I think this is where I've done quite well, certainly in the state school I worked in, and even in the private school I work in now. Whenever I deliver it, I always try and accommodate children that might not necessarily like the sport.
Great.
So, if I'm doing, my first thing always with all of my lessons is I'll set up a load of nets. And by the way, for those coaches, they're turn and go, "Well, I haven't got nets at school." I very often will get a piece of tape out. I have used skipping ropes in the past and create some nets. And if you get some children just having a go at doing something over the net, and that group can do that, this group, okay, maybe we'll try this. You guys do this and do it differently, but also making sure you don't. And this is where I think a lot of coaches are guilty in schools. They focus on the ones that can do it and forget about the ones that can't. And the ones that can't do it are actually the ones that are more important than the ones that can. And I think that's my thing is, and I know it was highlighted when I got asked to work in the first school. They loved how I tried to accommodate everyone, and tried to make sure that everyone got involved. And and if you can do that, and you've walked away, and that kid that would prefer to play a video game has gone, quite liked that today. Success.
Yeah.
And that's the most important part. And it's so many people so many coaches it will jump into that P lesson, like you said, and try and deliver it like a tennis lesson, try and work on technique. And you can't do that. You've got to give them a taste of hitting a ball. You've got to give them a little bit of and keeping it as simple as just pushing the ball over. We're not going to go into grips. We're not going to go into the unit turn. It's literally giving them a taste of holding the racket and pushing the ball.
Yeah.
And when the moment you do it, so I love to do, and there's no drills in any of my lessons in the school. There's no cueing. There's none of that where I've got, like you might have at a tennis club. It's run where and they'll mix up as well. They'll never partner the same partner. I think I use that same system that I spoke to you about in the TOTS tennis, Steve, when we, whenever the TOTS are together, I'll never let them be with the same person.
Yeah.
Exactly the same in schools. They'll mix up. They'll all play everybody. And that's how I'd run a lesson. And it always got in the back of your mind, there might be one child here that tennis isn't their thing, and try and make sure that you accommodate them as best as you can.
Man, I think that's great, and we'll definitely touch upon sort of Sam's top tips for lesson delivery as well. I think a lot of coaches I find interested about that. I love the point about not focus on the better players within the group, which again is quite it's an easy thing for coaches to do. And you're right, because like I was just thinking, reflecting on the group I've got tomorrow. I've got 15 kids tomorrow, and the best two go to weekly tennis lessons at the club which have hired me. But you're right, in that situation, like they're not my priority there, because they're already in and in love with tennis. And
Yeah.
great word used there, taste. And that's the way I always see my schools. They were just, okay, I'm going to start sounding very business savvy here, but they were just my sales funnel. Like I'd go into the school, the idea was to sell them tennis. Because you're right. And like, I can remember when I first went into schools many years ago, and I'll say to the kids, okay, can anyone name me a tennis player? David Beckham. No, he's not a tennis player. Anyone else? Yeah. Michael Owen. He's not a tennis player. Okay. Wimbledon. Have ever heard of Wimbledon? You mean the football team, sir? No. Like most kids, especially again from where I grew up, like such a football heavy environment, they don't know what tennis is. Like they may be lucky if they get a glimpse of it at Wimbledon on TV. So I always went in there with the mindset of, okay, I've just got to sell what this game is to them. Like I've got to give them just a taste that they may go home and say to mum, oh, I did tennis today. I really enjoyed it. Like I maybe want to try and do it a little bit more. And I think that's a bit a lot of coaches I've been guilty of in the past miss when we do schools. We go in with this, and we talked about before with different ages and stages, go in with an ego of I'm a professional, use the word professional. I'm going to teach you how to play, and here's a C shape, and this is a forehand. And like, well, I haven't got the space for one. I've got 30 kids in a school hall. Like, I'm just hoping that it's no one ends up injuring themselves. So I almost just went in, okay, what can I make tennis look like? Racket, ball, and make it look fun. And I think that's a really important point you made there. Like, I just want to give them a taste, just a little taste of what tennis is. I can't give them the full tennis experience because I haven't got the space. And like, I remember once going into a school hall and having one net and 30 kids. Have you ever tried that?
Yeah.
And even mate, even if you use barrier tape and still have one net, those 30 kids want to play over that net. And I'm never making a mistake again.
I've got a good tip on that. If you've only got one,
go for it. Well, with
so if I ever have one net? There was actually a school I worked at recently, and I probably shouldn't say this because I think my bosses will probably be watching this. But there was one school I went to. I forgot to take the net. I forgot to take a net with me. So I turned up at the school and kind of went in their PE cupboard, and that another subject we've got to get onto, the PE cupboard. That's key.
Is it
Um,
worse than coaches COVID?
no. That's key. Then it will link into this a little bit as well. But I had one net. So what I did was I had 30 kids, and I put them into groups of 5 and 6, sorry. And what they did is they rotated. So I did 6 different stations, I think.
Yeah.
And all they did was rotate round. So 6 got to rally, the other 6 did this, floor rally, da 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 da. And that was actually that was only a 6-week block in the school, but it worked. Teachers went, "Can't believe how you did it that way. Stations? What stations?" And it was fantastic. Following week, turned up with 6 nets, and they all got to have a go over the net. So it flowed in quite well. But one of my biggest tip, the best bit of advice I always say to the coaches who do go into schools: take some of your equipment, raid the PE cupboard. PE cupboards are there. Some of the kit that I see in the PE cupboards still has the polythene bags on them.
Yeah.
They're all wrapped up in the boxes, but it doesn't get used, and
Yeah.
the equipment is so good. You've got to remember these schools are the government are throwing equipment at these schools. They've got so much cool stuff you can go and use. There's so many things you can link with tennis. I went into one school not long ago. Again, they were quite young, so it was year 1 and reception, and I wanted to create a net. And they had these the hurdles, but not like the jumping hurdles you see, like the running hurdles.
Yeah.
They had a mini net. Oh, amazing. There was about 100 of them there. So I got a load of those out, put some spots down, and they were rallying under these hurdles. It looked like a tennis net.
Yeah.
And there's so much stuff you can go. You said one of my top tips is always go and raid the PE cupboard. And on top of that, it saves damaging all your equipment as well. So
Yeah, there's a good point, and you're right with the PE cupboards. Like, I'm just reflecting now on all the PE cupboards I've gone into, and there's just bags of unopened equipment. Because you're right, the government they'll have some kind of scheme.
yeah,
The school will get the funding, get the free kit, throw it in the PE cupboard, and it will never see the light of day. And you're right there, because like what I tend to do now in schools, like anything that's in that space is a barrier, whether it's a bench, whether it's a skipping rope. I've used players as nets, human nets, we call it, where the kids will just sort of sit up and sit back to back, and the kids will rally with a sponge ball over their heads and stuff like that. And I think that's one of the sort of qualities of a good schools coach is you've got to be really creative.
Yeah.
Because like I remember once doing a session, and it was a little school in Wallasey, back home, and we normally do it in the PE, I'll say yard, like pit of like just mud. But it was too wet this day, and said, "Oh, we've got a little space inside, like a little hall. You can use that." Okay, great. So I've got these 30 kids. Where's the hall? So you take me down this corridor, dead thin corridor, and halfway through the corridor, it got a little bit wider for maybe 6 meters, and then went back narrow again. Mate, that was the space. So I had like this, let's say 12 by 12 meter space, but the corridor running through the middle of it. So you're just doing your session, like people just walking through right down through the middle. And like, but I look back at moments like that. It's like, well, how can I be creative? This is the space I've got. Like, what can I do? What can I use? What kit have I got? And I think that's where a lot of coaches fall down, because they like these regimented, structured tennis lessons they do at the club. And then because of the extra bodies and stuff and the chaos that a school environment brings, it's like they just panic. Whereas you're like, well, let's go and use a load of hurdles or this government kit that's lying around. And it's just, yeah.
Talk about storage, Steve, like reminds me of some of the situations I've been thrown in. And I remember one time I was doing a school thing, a massive school in this area. Huge, we've got massive, it's junior and infants, and it's got 2 kind of sections to the school. And I turned up and it was raining, and they've got a huge hall. Really, very, very lucky primary school, the state school. And I walked in, and the teacher said, "Oh, you got the hall?" So I thought, "Oh, fantastic." So I started setting up all my kit and what I wanted to do and everything. Then the next thing, these 2 football coaches came in, and they said, "Oh yeah, mate, we got to share the hall." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, it's raining. We're gonna have this half, you have that half." I had 30 kids, and I'm thinking to myself, "What am I gonna do? They're playing football. My guys are going to want to do what they're doing. This is going to be important. You know, they were loud. They had the whistles. So I turned it around on it. Okay, we played football, tennis,
Nice.
and we had a competition like hockey and football, tennis with all of them moving the button. The footballers were all looking at my less.
Nice.
So it you know, and we did it as well. But you had to do it in silence, so it meant they could hear me the whole time, and they
Yeah.
weren't allowed to say They had to communicate by waving their hands. So it's you have to adapt and adapt, overcome, and deal with these situations and stuff. But it's there's been so many. I mean, the rain's the worst one. Like when it rains, or you're given the hall and you go in the hall and the food all over the floor, or the dinner ladies are still setting up for dinner, and you've got to play around it. But you can do games where children are sitting down.
Yeah.
You can do games where you close it into a space, and it keeping it, don't be afraid of it, and don't think as well that they have to have a racket in their hand. One I quite with schools coaching, some of the lessons I've done, they might not use a racket until the very last lesson.
Yeah.
You're working with reception, year one, discussed all this in the TOTS stuff we've done. It's the racket might not come out straight away. So, and I think when you are working in a school, teachers in state schools really, really appreciate if you do any core skills, catching them being one of them. If it was bad weather, you went into a small area, you went into a classroom, and you give them each a tennis ball and you just taught them how to catch, teachers will love you for that. And that it's a core skill, and also it's a very useful skill for reception skills and receiving the ball in tennis. So
I mean, that's a great point. And I know, again, reflecting on all the schools I've done here, I always remember the most successful schools are the one I linked in with their curriculum a little bit. So I remember one school saying to me, okay, I can't remember, let's say year 2, argument's sake. Year 2 are really struggling with maths. So if you could be quite creative in your tennis and get them to work on the times table or work on subtractions and stuff like that. And it was like, okay, great, leave it with me. And I just designed games around mathematics and stuff like that. And like the school loved it because like they seen that I really took an interest in not just selling the game or selling tennis, but like, okay, these kids are struggling with maths. Okay, well, let's bring more maths in. I remember bringing Spanish in at one point and sort of learn a bit of Spanish and geography. And I think just little conversations with the teachers, like what you're working on at the moment in class, or work on the Romans, or this week we'll do like some kind of Colosseum game. And like, I think teachers really appreciate that. And we'll talk about the sort of the business side of things, about relationship with the school. But I think that really matters quite a lot as well, where you look to work with the school, where you're not just going in and just like looking to take away from the school. And and it sounds like you've done that quite successfully as well, because you keep offering you jobs where you are integrating yourself sort of into the school. But I think as we're sort of touching upon the delivery bit, then let's maybe look at some pain points for some coaches then, because we talked about the space. We talked about the weather and the football coaches. Did those football coaches have to top off and walk around in flip flops like most football coaches I know go to schools? No.
No, they're covered in tattoos.
Yeah.
That's the new one in my area. They love the tattoo sleeves in my area.
It's changed a bit since Safeguard. I remember years ago, like every football coach we'd meet would have the top off, have a pair of flip flops on, and just walk around like, what are you doing? Sorry to all the football coaches listening, and I'm not sort of typing at all. But I'm a former footballer. There you go.
Come on, England.
So let me throw some pain points at you then. Obviously, behaviour is quite a key one, and there's a great PE teacher who I follow on Instagram, Kev Weir. I really recommend everyone follows Kev. I think he's really good. And one question he got pushed to him the other week is like, how do you manage behaviour? I think I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I think the coaching questions, like they said, like, should you use physical punishments as like for behaviour? So if you're being naughty, you've got to do 10 press ups or squat jumps. And he was like, don't use physical punishment as behavior, because you want kids to enjoy sport. I had this conversation with a coach of the week, funny enough, on a call, on an LCA course. I'm like, don't really want to be using physical punishments, like not really good sort of thing. So let's say if you have a misbehaving child, and I think we got to always appreciate, like you mentioned before, kids might not want to be here. They may not enjoy sport. Like sport might not be their thing, the thing that they really lack confidence in. And I'm really misbehaving in your session. I'm really disruptive. I'm talking when you're talking. I'm pinching other people, kids behind the back. I'm sort of just really being boisterous. How would you manage me?
So if I was going in as a tennis coach, so I'm going in to the school to do a 6-week block with the school, and you have that one child who's misbehaving.
Yeah.
I kind of go 2 steps. So I'll give them a warning. Okay. You need to listen. I'll never raise my voice.
Okay.
Okay. I'll never shout. And I work with teachers now at various schools that I've been to that raise their voice. Doesn't work. It's different when you're teaching at a tennis club. You raise your voice, they'll listen. And I think that it's going through their head, mum and dad are paying for this.
Yeah.
I think it's different when you're in a school, because they'll just go, well, I don't want to listen to you anymore now. End of story. Then they'll switch off. So I won't raise my voice, but I'll talk to them. Look, we need this to stop. Okay. Otherwise we'll have to deal with it a different way. If I had it today, but I need to also explain the difference from my role at the school at the moment.
Yeah.
So again, if I was back in the schools, and the warning then would be, well, okay, unfortunately you're gonna have to sit out, or I'll go and ask the teacher to speak to them. But that's if I'm doing something that's coaching in the school.
Yeah.
At the school I work at, the children wouldn't address me as Coach Sam. They address me as Mr. Tyler. Slightly different. And when you're working in the school, and you can still use this as a tennis coach, find out what their reward scheme is.
Nice.
So a lot of state schools have something called the dojo system, which they have on their boards and throughout the day. And parents, by the way, also get informed if they've get a dojo or a no. I think the other one is a nojo or something like that, which is basically where they lose one of these. But it all goes towards their kind of their house towards the end of the term and how many points they get. And if they get certain -1, and now most of the teachers will say to me, if you want to use that system, the private school I work at, they have a coin system, and they get coins for working in certain characteristics throughout the term. So you turn around and say, well, I might have to take one of those away or reward them with it. It controls things. Certainly when you're working in a primary school, and if you do have that child that's misbehaving, you say, well, okay, well, I have to go and speak to your teacher, and it will be a no-jo, or well, I'll have one of your rewards taken away. It does soon stop. And very rarely I've had to sit a child out, but when I have had to sit them out as well, another kind of thing I will always do is I won't leave them sat out for the whole lesson. They'll sit out for a bit, they'll sit to the side, and I'll make a point. The teacher won't do it. I won't let the teacher do it. Or for example, if I'm working in a school doing a 6-week program, I'll make sure I go over and say, look, why did I sit you out? Obviously they'll tell me the reason why. Okay, you ready to join back in? What do we need to say? Say sorry, back in. Obviously, if it happens again, they'll sit out again. But leaving them out is not going to work, because then the following week they won't want to do it. They would have told their mates, so they go, well, I'm not going to do it because of that. Then you have 6 or 7 of them. So it's kind of a snowball effect. So it's better to try and get them back involved as much as possible, but just make them aware that you need to listen.
No, mate, there's so many good points in there, and I'd never thought about the house system before, or the no-jo go Pokemon
Yeah,
system.
most schools have I mean, I remember when I was at school, you had your houses and you got your points toward your houses.
Yeah.
You should take them. Obviously, you wouldn't really want to take them away, but quite quickly in the lesson, if you reward a child,
Yeah.
those children that aren't listening or misbehaving, you say, well, look, I'm rewarding this child because little Billy here has been done showing me really good listening. Would you not like that?
Yeah,
You know,
I think it's great. It's something I've never ever thought about before, and it's really interesting.
there's most state schools now have this thing called the dojos. It might have
Dojo.
changed. They might have upgraded it in the last, which they always do. Every term there's something new, something different coming in. But if you just at the beginning of a lesson say to the teacher, how do you reward the children?
I mean, that's great, and like it's something I never thought about before. And I think that's really powerful. And like for me, when it comes to behavior, like I always go back to like, what's the trigger? There has to be a trigger here. And I know in the past, like I've reflected on myself here before anyone else. Like I've gone in and I'm just trying to teach these kids stuff that either they can't do or they don't want to know. Like so more often than not, like, and we said it on the TOTS workshop, and it's something I say a lot now. We're entering their world, they're not entering ours. And sometimes we're going in and we're trying to force feed something. And like I might not like tennis. So you're trying to tell me how to play tennis, but I don't care. So then, like, as a coach, now I look at, okay, I've got to make a connection with everyone. And like, you did a great example there with the tennis football. You knew exactly you were fighting a losing battle against football. So
Yeah.
how can you switch it on its head? And I know in the past, especially over the last few years with schools coaching, like if someone's misbehaving, the first person I look at is me. Now, what am I doing wrong here that this kid's disengaged? 10
It's
years ago, I would have looked at the kid and went, you need to listen to me. I'm the expert. You're being naughty and stuff. But like now I take a step back. Okay, why are they misbehaving? Like I've not got them engaged. And then I'll have a conversation. Okay, what's the game? It's too easy, sir. We'll make it more difficult then. Oh, it's too hard, sir. We'll make it easier then. What can you do to change it? And to be honest, I had it tonight, not on in the school, but with a player on a performing squad. And he's like misbehaving, throwing his racket. And I said, well, why? What's causing that? And like, how can you change it? So part of it's the ecological, like I'm almost putting the responsibility on them. Well, you change it then. And I think it almost ties into my next question, my next challenge as well, which I'll come to in a minute. But the sitting out bit, I was reflecting there. I don't think I've made a player sit out for years. I can't even remember the last one. And
to be honest, Steve, I can't remember myself.
yeah,
Think the threat of it, is threat the right word? The kind of knowing that could
yeah,
happen, I think is quite a quick deterrent with younger children. So years reception 1, 2, 3, you say that they don't want to sit out.
yeah,
I mean, they'd much rather be running around and doing something. But as you said, they might disengage because it's not something that a sport that they like. But I know they'd rather be stood next to their friend or
yeah.
rather than sitting out. So
It's a really interesting one. I can't remember. I listened to something the other week on this whole subject, and you were saying that part of the problem was, what's her name? Super Nanny. What's the Super Nanny's name?
yeah,
With the naughty step.
yeah,
And he said, and what the podcast, it was a sporting podcast. I can't remember the podcast now, but they were saying the problem with sitting the kid out is it actually has the opposite. Like you said, there has the opposite effect. They end up either hating the sport, or you just put them more petrol on the fire and you're giving them the attention that they may be seeking. And like, oh, look at me, I'm sitting out. I'm a rebel. And then so now, like, I don't threaten to sit out. And it depends on what it is. If it's like just talking and stuff, I just let that fly these days. Because like, I'm not bothered if you're talking and I'm talking as much, as long as it's not being completely disruptive. But if you don't know what the game is, and then I'll spot you not listening. And then when everyone's enjoying the game, I'll go to Sam, what's the game, mate? You go, oh, no idea. Well, you were talking, weren't you? Well, I was, weren't I? Yeah, you might want to listen next time. Whereas,
it
like,
sounds quite. I don't know if this one sounds quite bad, Steve. There's a good example. A few weeks back, I had a boy in the whole time while I was doing a demonstration, and and I did kind of look back at myself afterwards and think, maybe that was the wrong way of dealing with it, Sam.
Oh, I like this, Sam, already. Go on.
And you know, I feel one of my skill sets, I'm quite patient. I don't lose my you know, working with tots as much as I do, you know, you know, you've got to have a lot of patience. And this boy continues to do it, and he'd almost turn his back on me to do it. And I think you obviously in your head you have to be aware of there might be a child that finds that difficult.
Yeah,
Have to
100%.
take all of those little things on board. But I knew that this wasn't the case. So I said to him, okay, can you come and do the demonstration with me? He picks the racket up and stands there, and everyone starts giggling because they all know he's been talking. He knows he's been talking. Right, you ready to go? Let's play. So I'm going to serve. We're going to play a match now. Are you ready? And I don't know what I'm doing, sir. I said, you weren't listening. Oh, no, I wasn't. Everyone has a little bit of a giggle. Okay, what are you going to do now then? Yeah. Okay, I'll sit down and listen. And whether it was the right way of dealing with it, and I probably wouldn't deal with it in a coaching situation like that.
Yeah.
And I'd expect them to be listening because they want to be there. But it worked. And ever since, that boy's always gone. We'll always joke about it, and he will go, right, okay, yeah. And it actually recently he's asked me more to do the demonstrations because actually he's quite able, he's quite good at doing it. It might not have worked, but it definitely worked on this occasion. It was quite early on in the lessons, and he's stopped doing it ever since. And obviously some people you wouldn't want to do that with. I kind of chose the right person to do it to. As I said, it's not going to work all the time. And you have to be careful who you do it to and who you do it with.
Yeah.
You know, I think, like you said, you'll kind of let them go off and right, okay, guys, go and do the exercise. Very often I'll walk up to them and said, you're doing it wrong there, buddy. Yeah, I know. You weren't like you said. Were you listening to what I said? No. Right, shall I explain it again? Yeah, please, Mr. Tyler. Okay, we'll explain it one. I'm not going to explain it again after this. Yeah, okay. And they'll listen. So there's that way of dealing with it as well. It probably there's elements there with that I guarantee lots of people will disagree with, but on that situation it really did work. And I think you've got to do that. You've got to select your audience, select the year group to do that with. Year sixes are the best at doing that because you're not listening. Right, okay, guys, can you come up and teach? Like, stand up there. Everyone will have a bit of a laugh about it. Can listen now, boys. Yeah, all right. Yeah, sorry, Mr. Tyler. And that sometimes works disciplining. Certainly when you get the older kids as well. I mean, I've tried to teach tennis in a senior school once. With, I mean, it was a few years ago. They would have been same age as my daughter now, year 10.
Yep.
So 14, going on 15. Load of girls that obviously don't want to be there. They'd rather be looking at their phone. And I had one boy messing around constantly the whole time. And the best way of me actually disciplining him was actually kind of talking to him and having a chat with him. And he wanted to listen more then. I said, can you help me do this? Oh, that was good. Do you want to show? And that was a better way of dealing with it in that situation. So
I think there's loads of stuff, really good stuff in there. I think one way in which I wouldn't recommend anyone deals with it, and which I've dealt with it many years ago when I started coaching, is you shout at the kid, like, listen, like that's not a positive way. One thing I do now is I just stop talking. I just stand there silent, and then everyone starts feeling really weird. Like, okay, I'm ready now. I'm ready when you're ready. And it's something that I've been doing quite a lot, especially in the school. I'm trying to talk less because, and we'll talk about time in a minute. Because like this school I've got tomorrow, lovely school. Lessons meant to start 3:15. School finishes at 3:15. So she know for the fact the lesson's not starting to 25 to 4.
Yeah.
By the time they get changed, get to the hall, then go from the hall to the tennis area. So
little Billy's lost his lunch. Yeah.
So the lesson starts 25 to 4. I've got to get to the school gate for 5 to 4. I've got 20 minutes. So now, like, I'm not talking that much. I'm just okay. This is what I'm trying to explore. Go. I think looking back at a lot of my early school stuff, I was just talking too much and too long. And when you've got a group of 8, you've got very limited time. When you've got a group of 30, mate, and that's why I said before, I'm not bothered if they're talking, because to be honest, if I'm in a group of 30 tennis coaches and a coach tutor's talking, I'm probably not listening. So I can't be telling these kids they should be listening. And mate, the amount of time in work, like if I'm not the lead coach, and let's say you're doing a demo, I guarantee I'm just stood there, and then you'll go, okay, let's go. And I'll go to Coach XP. What are we doing? I just don't listen. Ask my wife. I don't listen. So now I have empathy with these kids, and like I just make a joke of it. Or the only time I really get serious is if it's safety. If safety is an issue. So if someone's doing something that's unsafe, and then what I might say to them is like, listen, Sam, like that's a bit dangerous. Like if you carry on doing that, I can't let you play, mate. Really sorry. Because we don't want you to get hurt. We don't want anyone else to get hurt. That's fair enough, isn't it, Sam? Oh, Steve, yeah, that's coach. Mr. Whelan. I never get called Mr. Whelan. So that's the only time that I'd ever threaten someone sitting out. And normally it's a case of, oh, mate, I can't let you play. You're going to have to go back to class or back to the office. I don't want you, because I don't want them sitting at the side, because I think that's just demoralizing for everyone. But once I say that, it's like, yeah. And then I think what coaches don't understand is they're not trying to be dangerous more often than not. Depends what school you go to. I've been to some rough schools. More often than not, they're just excited, and they're just goes back to the tots. They're exploring this game and space, and they don't know how to interact with it. And that's the only time I ever get that close fight. If it's dangerous, I might go, mate, I might have to take you out here.
Yeah, I mean, if I ever see anything that's dangerous, I'll link it to a story where I know something's happened.
Oh, you're one of those teachers, are you? Don't rock on your chair because such and such died.
Yeah,
You're one of those teachers.
No, I always go kind of the tennis related ones.
Okay.
Hey guys, so make sure you're standing back when they're rallying or when they're serving, and because you know what's going to happen, the racket's going to wallop you around the head, and and I've seen it before, guys. Really,
classic teacher, mate.
But it's such a great way of getting him to listen. I quite enjoy. I got so many stories over the years, taking their racket back and hitting the person behind them. Yeah, nothing ever as serious as you obviously over exaggerate it a bit, but it's a great way of getting them. Really? Okay, and they do listen. Year 6s, you make the joke of, guys, look, I warned you once, but I'm not going to keep doing it. I have told you, and they'll very quickly get the message as well. But yeah, I quite like a little quick story of, yes, once upon a time I witnessed this. Okay, Mr. Tyler, we'll make sure we stand back. That one always works quite well.
Made me giggle because I think every teacher in my school had some kind of horror story for something that you're not meant to do. Maybe it's in teacher training. Maybe that's what it is. But again, I think that's just good because it's bringing awareness. Because like, if you are working with 30 kids in a small space, like rackets are dangerous.
Yeah,
and I think when I ever tutor or teach coaches on schools, I just say, mate, your job is to organize the chaos. You're just organizing the riot. You're just constantly looking everywhere for just problems, and you're just trying to firefight, but it's okay. And I think that's a big thing with my schools coaches is they are chaotic and they are crazy, but I'm just looking, okay, can I make it as safe as possible in the space that I've got? And you're right with rackets, and like thinking like if I've got a big group in a hall, like I would use 2 players as a net and 2 players hitting. Like you might make back to back and with our shoes apart, and we hit between the legs, or they lie side by side, like 2 sausages, I call it, and you got to hit over the sausages. If I've got a huge group, there might be 3 sausages. So I'm just thinking of like, how can I make sure these kids are spread out enough where they're not going to sort of hit each other, but also allow them to have fun. And I recently, so I say this, I'm going to say, because you're not listening to the podcast, I recently did a schools lesson with another coach. And mate, it was hard to watch and bite my tongue because it was so like, no, you're not doing that. No, you can't do this. No, you're being dangerous. No, you have to do an elephant drop. I'm like, what the hell's an elephant drop? And like, it was just so like, just shouty and negative. And I'm like, and that's why I got the conversation like, you realize you're meant to be selling tennis here. Like it's meant to be a real positive experience. And I get it from his point of view. Oh, if he's listening, I'm sorry. But from his point of view, like he's worried someone getting hurt. But I was saying, but you're kind of making the atmosphere more tense
Yeah.
because of the way you're interacting with the kids. Like just relax a little bit, watch the tone, and just let them play. As long as they're safe and they're doing something that we want them to do, that looks a bit like what we're trying to achieve. It's okay. It's a safe space. Like again, going back to it's not a tennis lesson. It's
I think one of the best lessons I had working in the school where I was just in there kind of maybe once or twice in that term was I was talking to the group of 30 teachers behind me doing our marking, whatever it's marking
classic.
room. And I was talking, and this one boy stood up and said, "Coach Sam's talking. Can you be quiet, please?" And I was like, "Oh, I got their attention just because that they wanted to hear."
Yeah.
And all of them turned around and was like, "My goodness, he said that. He said that. What? Oh God, Brian, we better listen." And I do think when you're in there once or twice, even if you're in there for like a 6-week block in a school, you've got to kind of be, you've got to almost be their friend a little bit. You've got to make sure you're right, bud. Yeah, come on, let's give it a try. I know this might not be your thing. Do you want to have a go at it? Yeah, all right. Shall I be your partner? Yeah, and I do think you've got to form a relationship, and I found that quite hard actually because when I started in the school, I'm now working at. Obviously, I was there just doing breakfast clubs and after school clubs, and it was a massive change for them from calling me Coach Sam to Mr. Tyler, and they adapted to it pretty quick. But I still had that relationship with some of them where I treated them like I was the coach, and and some of them come to the coaching program. So when they get to the coach, some of them on the day will call me Mr. Tyler all day. They get to the tennis club and have to call me Sam, and it's having that transition between it, and I do think it's important when you're working in school. And I watch so many good teachers, and some of the teachers I work with in the school that I work at, they're not just a teacher. They're almost their friend as well. They're someone that they can talk to. They're not someone that they just know they're going to get shouted at. Okay. They're someone they can go, right, do you mind if can I ask for this bit of advice? Can I do it this way? And when I watch and I think about my daughters going to school, I hope they have teachers that they can go and just talk to. Because I think you have to be approachable when you're working to school. You have to have patience. You have to have a face that they can go up and go, I want to ask you that. If you're grumpy all the time or raising your voice, they're not going to want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to talk to you. How on earth in a school are you going to expect them to listen and take part in your lesson? And obviously when you're meeting children of 30 kids to learn all their names straight away is pretty tough. I'm not bad at learning names. I'm quite good at it. But calling them buddy, calling them mate, it's okay. Let's give it a try and communicate them sometimes like you're a kid a little bit yourself. It works, and it's a great way of getting them to respond to you. I mean, obviously it's different for me now a little bit being called Mr. Side, but I am still that person that will still go, mate, come on, and they'll come up and give me a high five. Hey, some of the year groups don't call me Mr. Tyler, they call me Mr. T, which I love. I don't meant to call me Mr. T, but that's quite cool. And I quite like that. I like that they can talk to me or ask me a question. And I think that's, if they enjoy your company, they're going to enjoy your lesson more.
Yeah.
I think if they
Yeah.
want to talk to you and they want to kind of listen to you, then they're gonna engage in your lesson even more. And I think that's super important.
I think what you've touched upon now is it's just player centered. It's just making the connection with the player or the pupil or the kid in this case. And I think again, on reflection, as you were talking there, I'm thinking, well, if I think about the teachers in my school who I really enjoyed their lessons, it wasn't actually the lesson that I enjoyed. Like I remember one teacher, Mr. Pearson. Shout out to Mr. Pearson. I hated English because I can't spell. I've got dyslexia. I can't. So English was horrible. I hated it. But I had Mr. Pearson year 9, and he's just a nice guy. who like took an interest in me and speak to me and valued what I had to say. And I got my best ever English grades because of him. And I hated English, and I almost did it at A level till he went, "Yeah, but mate, you can't spell." Oh yeah, that is kind of a barrier, I guess, to be honest. But
Do you know, it's like I've got the same thing. My science teacher, Mr.
yeah,
F, and I hated science. Absolutely despised it. Sitting on those two tall tables, the Bunsen burner. All I wanted to do was set fire to the Bunsen burner. But
yeah,
he kind of engaged me. He spoke to me. He treated, you know, not treated me different.
yeah.
That's not. It's not. It was more that he got me engaged in enjoying science, and he related it to things I like. You know, he very quickly knew my passion was sport. So anything we did, he related it to sport with me. And again, like yourself, science then became an enjoyable lesson for me. I think the
Yeah.
following year I got a different teacher and didn't like it anymore. But it was, you know, it really helped. And I think it's really important. I think
And
you've got to be approachable and you've got to relate to the kids as well.
but that's a huge point, and I think it's next week. I've just written an article on this actually about the impact of coaching. Because like if I look at again my schooling days, like I hated English, but that teacher made me love English. I was amazing at maths, believe it or not, for the first 3 years of high school. I know you look really shocked there, mate.
I didn't know I can.
But I was really, again, really, really clever in the
I've
first 3 years.
tennis balls at the end of a lesson.
Yeah, well, count the money.
One.
But I was really good at maths until I got a teacher. And Mr. Gabbett, shout out to you, Mr. Gabbett, if you're listening and still maybe still alive, but definitely listening. Come on. Yeah. But because the way he was, and he was very strict, very disciplinarian, very shouty, old, like proper, like you probably class him as an old school teacher, bordering on like maybe wouldn't be able to teach in 2024, like some of the stuff like he used to sort of say and do. But that made me hate it. And it wasn't the subject, it was the way that the person who was in charge, who wants to say in charge, has the impact. And I think as tennis coaches, we don't understand that impact we have. Like,
Yeah.
we can turn the biggest tennis lover off the sport for how we interact with them. We can turn someone who doesn't even enjoy tennis, we can turn them round because of the stuff you said there, by taking an interest, by giving them a voice, asking their opinion, being their friend. And there's always a fine line because you don't want to be too friendly because then it may go the opposite way. But
100%.
and I think that especially when coaches work in schools, because I think there's an expectation, and it's great with, and you might have a great opinion on this. I think a lot of coaches go in thinking, I've got to be like a teacher here. And they almost, okay, I've got to be strict. I've got to make sure that no one's talking because their teaching might be like that. And I've had it in the past where like a teacher's brought the kids in and they've almost marched in, like Attack of the Clones, so like all these kids marching in, they all turn all side by side, and the teacher will walk up and down. She'll give a bit of a warning, and then she'll walk off, and the kids go, and then and then it's play because, and then like I've almost felt like, well, I've got to match that teacher, whereas I'm like, no, because they've probably had that all day. And I'm not saying that's a wrong way to coach. I'm sure teachers will have their own ways of doing it in the classroom, which is different to my space. But then I think, well, okay, I'm going to give them something different then. But I made the mistake of trying to discipline them. And I didn't have the authority of that teacher because I'm not with them 9 till 3. I don't know the personalities and the reasons why. And I think a lot of coaches, again, I made this mistake when I went to school. I felt like I had to be like a teacher. And then it wasn't until I got a little bit wiser and started coaching a bit more. I was like, no, Dad's got to be a coach. And it's like, it's interesting. Like some kids will say "sir" to me, and unless it's the school policy or the school's values, I'm like, oh no, I'm not a sir. I'm a coach. Call me coach or call me Steve. Unless the school say to me, we would like them to address you as sir, or doesn't ever happen now, Mr. Whelan. Because I'm like, because I'm not a teacher, I'm a coach. Like, so you can address me a little bit differently. What's your thoughts on that in terms of maybe coaches having that expectations of going in and maybe being a bit teacher?
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think I think the two things they do is they go in expecting to discipline and shout like their teacher probably does.
Yeah.
And I think their other expectation is the fear of 30 kids and trying to teach every single one of them perfect technique, which is just impossible. It's not going to happen. And I think as well, it's the, I think one of the other things is the travel to the school puts coaches off. I think the setting up puts coaches off.
I'm laughing, right, because I'm just thinking about tomorrow. I've got to get to that school, mate, at 2 o'clock for a 3:15 start just to get parked.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, definitely.
And it does my head in.
Oh,
It wrecked my head.
it's you know, I've one of the days I'm at the school I work at, I've got 15 minutes to get the other side of the town I work in to get to my tennis club.
Yeah.
And it is stressful, and you have to arrive a bit earlier to set the lesson up, set your nets up, or whatever it is you're going to find in the PE cupboard that day. It's not, it isn't easy. And I think the other thing, because the children, if you're in there for like a 6-week program or one taster session, the kids might not like the sport, as we discussed. Taking your brand new tennis balls, 50 of them, 25 have gone over the fence. One kid's tore one apart. Another kid's smashing the racket on the concrete playground. You kind of leave the school, you think to yourself, I had all this nice equipment. It's absolutely destroyed. So those are the things that you kind of can put coach. It's not easy. But I do think it can be quite rewarding. And
Yeah.
it goes back to what I said when we did the Tiny Tennis Titans. It's daytime work.
Oh, massively.
And I think I love working in school. I love it as much as I do working with tots tennis. I've worked in nurseries as well. And at the moment, actually, we're not in any nurseries, and it's something I'll be discussing. But and actually, I'll hold my hands up. That's probably because I've been so busy at the school I work at. But I think it's so important for your coaching program. Your holiday camps. You think of all those kids that, if I was to look at our holiday camps, that yes, okay, quite a few of them are from the coaching program, but not many. And if you're doing some good advertising in local schools and stuff and promoting it, I think then you've got that opportunity to get new players into your program. I always look at the holiday programs, half-term holidays, summer holidays. Summer holidays are massive. That's your next block of children for the new term. And I think coaches forget that most of them come from schools. And it's really important, massively important.
It's massive, mate. I think that's something that we were hoping to discuss in terms of sort of how to make contact. So if I'm just conscious of time, I don't want to keep you too late. I'm just looking at the football score as well. I'm not going to give it away.
Oh, no, you have to tell me.
Yeah, we haven't missed too much, mate. It's 0-0. So yeah, we do definitely
made the right decision.
He made the right decision. But you're right. I think it's just getting over the barriers and we've talked about quite a lot of barriers, to be honest, in this call, like the discipline, the unruly child, the space, the equipment. I think they are all barriers. And I think the word I keep coming back to in my head is just the expectation. I think as a coach, if you go in with an expectation of this perfect setup and regimented session, and kids are going to walk in like clone troopers, like we talked before, and they're going to listen, that's when you get stressed as a coach.
Yeah.
Like tomorrow when I go to that session, I go in with not a blasé approach, but I go in with like I'm just going to do the best I can with what I've got. Like, as long as these kids are having fun and they're safe, and two of them turn around and say, quite fancy playing tennis, then done. Absolutely happy. And I think I just know the last quick story from me, but even like last week, we're doing the session last week outside. There's me, I've got an assistant coach with me. 2 weeks ago. And a plane goes overhead. And I've got them all watching a demo at this point to show the next day, and the plane goes overhead. Mate, I just sat down, and the assistant coach is looking at me like I'm nuts. And she goes to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm waiting for that plane to go." She went, "Why?" Because I said, I've got no chance competing with that plane. So I'm
Oh,
just going to sit down for 45 seconds. And the kids go, oh, look, playing, whatever. And when the plane passed, they all went, oh, why is Steve sitting on the floor? I went, okay, let's go again now. And I said to the assistant coach, like 7 years ago, I would have shouted at those kids
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah,
not paying attention. Whereas now I'm like,
yeah.
it's going to cost me 45 seconds. I'm not going to get stressed out by the plane. I'll just sit down. It was roasting. I'll just sit down. And it was fine. It was okay. Like, and then I got up, did the demo, and the kids went out. And then but my reflection on that story and what I was saying to the assistant coach was I might have lost quite a lot of those kids' attentions there by shouting and being
Yes,
quite not
that's
aggressive, but being disciplined, trying to discipline them, and you shouldn't be distracted by that. And then that would have probably festered on a bit longer, and then I would have got stressed out by it. Whereas now, it'd be like before, where I just don't talk. I just sit down. Fine. It's okay.
yeah.
To be fair, it's a plane. It's pretty cool.
Yesterday, the school that I work at's on the main road, like next to the school, and an ambulance went past.
Yeah.
So all the kids are going looking at the blue light.
Yeah.
So I'll just hang on for a minute. And like 30 seconds, okay, right. So guys, next thing, a police car follows down the road as well. But I mean, to be fair, that I started laughing, and sure enough, the kids were laughing as well. Within 10 seconds it stopped, and we ready to go again. But yeah, it's
But it's mad though, because like in that situation again, it's a bit like what we say in tennis. Like you can only control what you can control. You can't control the playing. So don't try and take control of that situation because you can't. Like I can't get their attention off that playing. But it's gonna go. It's gonna go in 45 seconds.
Yeah.
Like it's fine. So, and I think that's my one thing I take from this call, from what you've said, but also my own reflection. Like just chill out. Like don't go in there with these high expectations, and just enjoy it, because like there's a reason why I still do a school, because I enjoy it, because it's not tennis coaching. I can go in, I can act like an absolute fool, a bit like touch tennis. I only do one touch tennis a week because I enjoy it. So I can go in. It helps the club out that I do a little bit of work for, a little tiny tennis club. It helps them out a lot because they've got a great relationship with the school, which they want to keep. And it's like, just if I can get just a couple of those kids interested in the game that I love, then it's worth it. And like you said, if I was a coach, mate, I'd be just hitting every school up and filling my daytime hours, because it's generally quite easy work. And we'll definitely maybe touch upon this in the second podcast about like how to make contact with schools, funding available outside the national governing bodies, which we could maybe touch upon as well.
One top tip,
Go on.
Steve. I'll always do that. I always love this one, and it's always one that kind of is simple. It's a really simple, and I'm probably saying something that lots of coaches know. But I always kind of speak to like the younger coaches and stuff on our team, and make sure you know who you're teaching.
Right.
So you can apply your equipment. So they'll say to me, oh, I'm teaching year 2. How old are they? So whatever year group you have, +4. If they're year 2, they're 6 years old.
Okay.
So you can bring the correct equipment. You don't turn up with a year 2 group with 25-inch rackets. You don't turn up with a year 6 group with 19-inch rackets. Things like that. And how you can, so if you know you're working with year 3, think in your head, you plus your 4, right, okay, then that's how I can plan my lesson. And that's what I always used to do. And I think it's one I've always stuck with in my head. And as I said, probably everyone knows that one, but +4, just you think in your head, right, okay, I've got year 6 today. In year 6, you think, well, okay, well, I was at primary school year 6. They're going to be tiny. I'll get the 21-inch rackets out. You turn up with year 6 and they're 10 years old and you're using a 21-inch racket, they're going to soon tell you about it. And, it's a great way of kind of going, okay, gives you their age, and it allows you then to kind of set the lesson plan, because they won't tell you. The school, like our tennis club, kind of get the tots, the blue, the red, and that kind of age span, but you don't know what year 6 would be. You don't know what year 11 would be. You don't know what year 12 would be. Or reception, obviously they're going to be 4, because that's where it starts.
Mate,
a good one that I always use, and I think it's quite a valuable one. That one.
I'm just sitting here really guilty because my biggest thing with schools is when teachers go to me, "Oh, you got key stage 2 or you got year 1." I'm like, how old are these kids? And like, no matter how many times I try to get my head around it, and I'm like, oh, there's +4 to it, and that would have given me the answer. Just wasted 23 years of coaching not knowing that. And you're saying, oh, these coaches might know it. I'm like, I didn't know it, and I've done like, I'm definitely a few hundred hours of small tennis in.
Simple. It's so simple. I'll never forget when I first learned that. I worked with an amazing PE teacher in the first school, a lady called Sarah Portu. And Sarah, if you're watching this, thank you. And she taught me it, and I'll never forget it. It was like, blimey, it's a light bulb. And the reason he told me was because I believe we were going to a football fixture, and the football fixture was for year 2, and then obviously year 2, okay, we're talking 6, or it might have been older, but I've picked
Year
up
2, 6, mate, because it's 2 + 6. So yeah, I was good at maths. I told you I was good at maths. You see,
2 + 4, Steve, not 2 + 6.
oh yeah.
But I took no, my fault. I shouldn't have said. I took the wrong size football. Obviously, the size of football similar to tennis rackets. I took the wrong size football. So, well, no, why would you do that for that age? Okay. So it was a good one. I always kind of use that one when I go into a school.
What a great tip to finish on, and I just completely destroyed my myth of being good at maths as well in the same sentence, which is fine.
I think I shot you there, mate. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right, mate. It's okay. It is almost 10 o'clock now. I've been working since 7 o'clock today, man. It's been a long day. I'm sitting here roasting under my light as well. But mate, but just as we wrap things up, I think it's been great. There's so much we can unpack with schools tennis. I just want to thank you for your time. If any coaches are interested in getting in touch with you, I believe you're happy to maybe mentor and speak to some coaches and give them some sort of bespoke advice. How can they get in touch with you?
So I'm on Instagram at Tyler Tennis Coaching. I'm linked to most of your stuff as well, Steve. I'm also on Tiny Tennis Titans, and you can contact me via email at sam@tylertennis.co.uk.
Excellent. I'll put that in the show notes as well when it goes out. But mate, thanks so much for your time and your stories and your absolute golden nugget and making me think about 23 years worth of schools coaching that I did incorrectly.
It's a good one, that one. I thought you'd like that one.
Yeah, no, I like that one. But mate, listen, that was great. As always, check out mytenniscoaching.com. Follow me at Instagram, My Tennis Coaching. Check out My Tennis Coach Academy, which Sam is a member of. So you can interact with Sam inside the academy. And you're going to do a presentation for us at some point, aren't you? You're going to do
I'm going to do
presentation.
A little snippet presentation of working in the school. So, yeah, it will just give you some ideas, and I'll show you the PE cupboards that I've raided over the years.
Mate, one thing I'm taking away today, apart from that, is a +4.
Yeah,
+4. The other thing is, and I forgot this tip. I'm annoyed because I'm going to raid their PE cupboard tomorrow when I go to the school. I always used to do it though. I always used to go to the PE cupboard and just use all their kit.
Right, set yourself a challenge tomorrow. Don't take any of your kit. Dare you? Don't take any of your kit and do a tennis lesson with just their kit in the PE cupboard.
Oh man, I'll literally have a ball. I'll be using basketballs, football.
Yeah,
mate,
amazing.
I love that type of session where it's just
amazing, fantastic. And they'll love it. They'll absolutely love it as well.
But being from Liverpool, like I've got to make sure I put the kit back. That's definitely a bit I've got to remember sometimes. So like sometimes if I see some good kit, it may find its way in my coaching car. You never know. I'm cutting that bit out of the podcast.